The period of the glacial climate not only means the struggle of animals for survival in their hunt for nuts, but also represents one of the most severe tests for human civilization. Thousands of years ago, glaciers extended to the equator, and most of the Earth's surface was a dry desert. Most of the food was stones. Despite this, our ancestors managed not only to survive, but also to increase the volume of their brains, developing characteristics that still help us survive. Regarding life in this harsh era, our guide to the past, Mikhail Mudryk, will tell. Let's go back in time to about 1630 BC. Our Mikhail Mudryk lives on the territory of modern France. This period falls on the apogee of the Ice Age. Let's take a closer look at what it is and why exactly it is so important. Our planet's climate has always changed, but about 200 years ago, the idea that the planet could experience global periods of cooling and warming seemed ridiculous. In 1837, Louis Agassiz presented a report in which he put forward the theory of ice ages, according to which epochs of global cooling alternate with periods of warming. His opinion was first ridiculed, including William Thomson Lord Kelvin, whose name became a symbol of scientific thermodynamics. Kelvin estimated the age of the Earth at 20 to 100 million years, and the gradual cooling theory was dominant. However, the bones of animals that preferred warmth were found in the northern hemisphere, and traces of glaciers were found closer to the equator. These arguments soon began to cast doubt on the long-term stability of the climate. The scientific community began to change its mind. Now we know for sure that the ice ages were uneven, and we live in one of them. We are fortunate to coincide with these periods in several key respects. The Earth, first of all, has historically been subjected to cold periods more often than warm ones, as it is today. Secondly, ice ages, including our current one, last only a few tens of thousands of years, while ice ages last about 100,000 years. Third, the periods between ice ages are shorter than the ice ages themselves. The ratio of cold and warm periods is 8 to 2, where 8 corresponds to very cold times with the expansion of glaciers, and 2, close to the modern climate. Humanity was able to benefit from this climatic diversity, while for our hero Mikhail Mudryk, life was much more difficult. He lived during the last ice age, also known as the Valdai glaciation. This period began a little over 100,000 years ago and ended about 12,000 years ago. Interestingly, around the same time, the first large cities and civilizations began to form. Probably, climatic conditions played a role in this process. The times of Mikhail Mudryk were characterized by permafrost that extended to the south of France and north of India. Even in regions where the ice did not reach, life remained difficult, as the ice was frozen water. And when most of the water on the planet is in a frozen state, rain becomes rare. Dry savannas began to replace tropical forests, including in the Amazon, which has retained its appearance since the time of the dinosaurs. The past of the ice ages left traces. The sea level decreased by 120 meters, which led to the unification of North America and Eurasia, creating a bridge in the place of the modern Bering Strait. New conditions prompted a variety of creatures to seek new territories. So, the conquerors, like wild boars, moved to America, where they settled, and also became the ancestors of the future Aztecs. In their wake, mammoths and bison came to America, and in the opposite direction, various types of animals. At first glance, it may seem that the life of Mikhail Mudryk during the Ice Age was like life in paradise. However, in reality, the situation was not so bad. The reason for this is adaptation to the environment. Apart from the tundra and steppe, which may be considered intuitive to us, it is better to compare the painting of 18,000 years ago with the African savanna, but with slightly different types of vegetation. Such fields of grasses and conifers instead of eucalyptus best describe the appearance of the tundra during the Ice Age. Despite the cold, grass could grow in this environment even in winter, providing good fodder for the animals. Mammoths, which served as food for the most dangerous predator of that time, man, were characteristic inhabitants of this era. People like Mikhail Mudryk existed in small tribes. They did not yet have large settlements, since there were far from so many of them. Concerns about survival, finding food, and temporary shelter were the main concerns. Life in such an arid climate, which was 6 degrees colder than it is now, required constant movement. Large animals that could be hunted forced people to constantly change their habitat. However, even among such difficult conditions, our ancestors found a creative approach to solving the problems that nature set before them. The North American natives, for example, got 80 to 90% of their diet from buffalo and bison, and their skin was used to create clothing and tools. To hunt huge animals, they came up with elegant methods. One way was to create a hole near the cliff where sharp objects were placed. After that, one of the hunters put on the skin of a calf and attracted the attention of the herd by shouting, leading them to a cliff. As the herd moved towards the cliff, other hunters came out of their hiding places, creating noise and panic with screams and jerky movements. This made the animals run in confusion to the cliff, and, as a result, they fell into the abyss, where they died and became the prey of the tribe. For example, in Canada, an 11-meter cliff was listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. In other regions, such as the Eskimos, reindeer hunters used sophisticated methods. They wounded the deer to avoid the long transportation of the carcass over long distances to their home. Then they imitated the behavior of a wolf pack to force the injured deer to run to the river, where they were killed, loaded onto a boat, and safely returned home. These sophisticated hunting methods might be extremely ridiculous for us today, but they were completely in the spirit of the era. The human brain during the Ice Age was 10 to 15% larger in volume than ours. Previously, in 2021, it was believed that brain volume was decreasing when the Earth became warmer and people stopped fighting for survival on a daily basis. However, 2 years ago at the University of Boston, studying the world's collection of remains, they came to the conclusion that turned out to be even more disappointing. The average brain volume decreased only 3,000 years ago, which, from a historical point of view, is a very recent period. It is important to note that a large brain size does not necessarily make Mikhail Mudryk and his contemporaries geniuses. This rather indicates their more advanced terrain skills, ability to play 5D chess with animals, to make complex plans and long-term plans for the tribe. This was necessary in the conditions of constant travel and the need to organize the use of booty well. For example, one mammoth could provide food for a tribe of 10 people for a long time. But it was necessary to carefully plan what part of the meat to freeze, what to cook, and what to make dried, and so on. All this formed a complex equation that is incomparable to our modern shopping trips with the purchase of products on the list. With a benevolent great brain, our Mudryk also acquired side effects in the form of curiosity and creative activity. We are all familiar with cave paintings, handprints, and other attempts by ancient Ice Age people to express themselves. What is often overlooked is that this was often a spontaneous manifestation and often took place far away from the caves where they lived. An example of such an event is the Bazzora Cave in northern Italy, where archaeologists in 2019 carried out a detailed reconstruction of what happened in it 14,000 years ago. On this day, 5 people, 2 adults and 3 children, including a 3-year-old baby, went there, lighting their way with pine resin torches. An adult man walked in front, and the children and the family dog moved behind. The group traveled 150 meters and found that the corridor narrowed and became an 80 centimeters high tunnel. Even this did not stop them, and they continued to move forward without crawling on all fours. Apparently, the elder assessed the level of danger of the path and laid the route. Even a small pond did not stop them, and the family overcame the mud and continued on their way. They opened a large hall with beautiful stalagmites, and a kind of bacchanalia began here. Adults left their handprints on the ceiling with charcoal. Children dug through the clay and studied the stalagmites. It only took a few minutes, after which the group simply turned around and left. The internal meme of archaeologists is that if the purpose of an object or action cannot be explained, then it can be called a ritual. However, more modern scholars tend to believe that it was more of a display of creativity and entertainment. Obviously, at that time, people were just people and sometimes did things without clear plans. It is interesting that the stereotypes that all the actions of ancient people were subject to rituals are gradually becoming a thing of the past. A more realistic perspective suggests that the people of those times often acted at random, without a clear plan. Through the efforts of scientists, the myths about the children of the Ice Age as useless appendages fade into the background. In reality, children made up half the population of that time, and they participated in the life of the tribe. Recent finds confirm that they helped adults make tools and hunt, gaining experience at a young age. This suggests that children were an important part of society and were actively involved in the affairs of the tribe. During the Ice Age, the population of the Earth did not exceed several million people, and only after the final retreat of the ice 14,000 years ago did this figure begin to grow rapidly. But by the beginning of our era, it had already amounted to several hundred million. Nature has let go of its grip, but sometimes we may not have appreciated this gift.